Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, friend. Listen, we are continuing our AI visual novel testing. Okay, this is going to be a part 2, but before we get into it, my name is Ashley. I am your creative BFF, and on this podcast, the StoryPod podcast, we like to flex our storytelling muscles, as it were, by practicing doing things like answering people's story questions from Reddit. Today, we're testing out some AI tools for a very particular type of storytelling, thusly and so on and so forth. If I can help you in any kind of way with story coaching, or if you have a question that I can answer here on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me at links below in the description. Probably the best way would be to DM me at my Instagram, just because I see that more quickly than email. But anyway, a couple of videos ago, I tested out 2 different apps because it was kind of like one of the first times that I thought about, not the first time that I thought about using AI to make a visual novel, but this was these 2 particular apps, which were Base 44 and Replit, I believe is what it was called, where you can just like do a prompt to create whatever kind of app. And so if you recall, or perhaps you don't, we tested it out, or I tested it out, just to kind of see what it would be like to try to create a visual novel with those apps. In the intervening time since that video, I have been testing Claude AI. This is a, what are they even called? Program, model? I don't know what these things are called. A GPT? I don't know. These different Claude versus Chat versus whatever other ones are out there. I have been testing Claude. This is my first time using it. Claude is a little bit aggressive for my taste in terms of, not really aggressive, but in terms of like pushing things in terms of story and stuff. But listen, that's okay. Listen, we're just testing this out. So I have been playing around with Claude a little bit, and I wanted to bring you in as I continue with a particular test that I'm running. So after asking it a few initial questions about various things regarding how would we work together creating a visual novel, what is the ownership between whoever created Claude and myself, are people like reading it? Can they steal my ideas? You know, all that kind of stuff. I did ask Claude because, to be honest, the structure of a visual novel obviously is going to be different than the story structure of a book or a script and things like that. So even though a visual novel is definitely something that I have been wanting to create for years, I've wanted to have like a little game studio creating these kinds of story-based games that I could do on my own. Whatever. Dreams, goals, hopes, and aspirations. But I wasn't sure about what specifically does the structure of a visual novel story look like. I had started writing one years ago that is still kind of in the archives. I will eventually return to it once I figure this all out. So I did ask Claude, what is the structure of a visual novel? So I'm going to switch over to my screen now so that you can see this with me. And I'm going to read the descriptions that Claude gave me. Now, before I really get into this, if you are just listening, I don't know, you may want to switch over to the video. There should be a link if you're just listening on podcast aggregators or hubs or whatever those are called. There should be a link to the video itself. You may want to switch over there to see what's happening versus just hearing me talk about it. But this is really going to be a let's discover together type of video. Not really a teaching, but a learning video for both of us. So anyway, I'm going to switch over now. Almost pressed stop recording, girl. All right, so on the screen, you shall see the different options that Claude gave me for what a visual novel story structure looks like, and I will read those to you. So here are the actual blueprints writers use according to Claude, and each has its trade-offs. The railroad or string of pearls. Players make choices, but all paths converge back to the same major story beats. The illusion of agency with a manageable writing burden. Most commercial visual novels work this way. Think of it as the story has 5 required scenes, and between each one you have small branching moments that affect tone and relationship scores, not destination. Ace Attorney as an example, and most dating sims. The next option is the branching tree. Every choice leads to genuinely different content, branching outward. Gives real agency but explodes in complexity fast. 3 choices deep with 3 options each equals 27 possible paths. Almost impossible to write well at scale unless branches are short. Works beautifully for short, replayable games designed to be played multiple times. What we built in the demo. So I asked Chat to do a demo. Not Chat. Claude to do a demo. Just make up its own story and show me what you can do, basically. The next option is the diamond. Branches split, then reconverge. You split at a choice, have a unique midsection per branch, then all paths merge again at a node before the next split. The workhorse of the genre balances real agency with writability. 80 Days uses this masterfully. The hub and spoke. A central home base scene the player returns to with explorable branches radiating out. Common in mystery and investigation games. You explore each spoke in any order, and the hub changes based on what you've discovered. Disco Elysium, Her Story. The network/web, most complex. No fixed beginning or end structure. The story is a web of scenes the player navigates. Rare and very hard to write, but can feel truly alive. Dwarf Fortress storytelling, some experimental fiction. The beats that still apply. Even with branching, writers use a version of traditional beats. They just apply them to the trunk of the story, the shared spine all players walk, not to every branch. A common hybrid framework. The inciting incident still happens to everyone. The midpoint revelation still happens. The climax still has to land. What branching controls is how the player arrives at those moments, what they know when they get there, and which version of the ending they unlock. And then it gave a list of different tools that writers of visual novels will use. So Twine, Artisy Draft, Inkle, and a plain spreadsheet. Of those, I had heard of Inkle. That was one that I was planning on using once I had heard about it some years ago. And then the unique beats branching games add. Beyond traditional structure, the genre has its own craft concepts worth knowing. The meaningful choice. A choice only matters if both options are genuinely tempting and both have real consequences. A choice between be kind and be cruel with no cost to kindness isn't a choice, it's a quiz. The callback, when the game remembers something you chose earlier and acknowledges it later. Even a small line like you mentioned your sister earlier makes players feel seen and rewards replay. Then they have the hidden stat. Many games track relationship values or personality traits invisibly and use them to gate options or alter endings without the player seeing numbers. Creates the feeling that the story is reading you. The tragic branch, at least one path should cost the player something real. Branches that are all equally pleasant feel weightless. The replayability hook, something in the ending or mid-game that makes a player want to go back and try the other path. A mystery unresolved, a character's fate uncertain, a door unopened. Then it gave something called, it titled it, a practical starting shape for a first game. For a first visual novel, the structure most writers land on is something like this. A linear opening of 10 to 15 minutes that establishes the world and characters. No branching yet, just investment. Then a first major choice that splits into 2 to 3 branches, each running 5 to 10 minutes. Those branches converging at a shared climax scene. Then a final small choice that determines which of the 2 to 3 endings plays out. That gives players real agency, keeps the writing manageable, and delivers the I want to replay this feeling without requiring you to write a novel's worth of content. And then it offered to basically give a visual structure. So it provides an example. I'm not going to read through the example that Claude created because I did end up adding my own story, and we can look at the example using the story that I added. So we're going to skip right past that. Okay. So it's giving me some, it gave me an option that it could create a story, and it basically created another story structure, story map kind of sample of this hybrid version of structure that it was giving. So I'm also not going to read that because, as I said, we're going to look at it through my own story. But let me skip down a little bit. It's explaining its choices. So I tell it now. In the lore of my channel, I have done like 3 videos using a combination of the story circle structure created by the guy who wrote, what's that, Rick and Morty? I can't remember his name. I didn't watch the show. Sorry. Okay, it wasn't my jam. But I did look at his story structure, the story circle, and I practiced it because it seems like a more pithy, kind of quick story structure than Save the Cat, although Save the Cat is kind of like the one that I usually kind of default to because it was the first story structure that I really was able to kind of understand when I was learning how to create story structure, when I was like trying to learn this craft of writing. And so it's kind of like home base for me. It's kind of like a little bit of a comfort zone for me in terms of story structures, but I want to experiment with the story circle. So I did do 3 different episodes using that, and then using a card game called Storymatic. So of those 3 episodes, story episodes, I decided to go with one that I cared about the least at this point, because I just wanted to test, with Claude, making like a quick visual novel before I invest a bunch of energy and writing and time into it. So I don't dislike it, but it's just like, okay, I don't care about this story as much. It was the very first one that I did. And so I'm going to click over there now. I'm not going to read everything to you. I will kind of have it on screen for a moment. You can pause if you want to read it. You can go back and watch the episode. If I remember, I'll try to link it below so that you can access it if you actually want to see it. So I might just give you the general gist of it. So if you want to read it, I'm going to slowly scroll through. Feel free to pause and read through it if you want to. Okay. All right, that should be enough time for you to pause and read through. Basically, the idea is it's a sci-fi. A guy is unjustly jailed, a guy with particular skills. And at the time of starting this project with Claude, and at the time of writing this little blurb story structure, practicing the story circle, I didn't really define what those skills were. So that's something that I did as I was working with Claude. But basically, he is unjustly jailed in a jail, like a galactic jail that is run by a corporation, basically. And he kind of loses his steam for life in terms of trying to get out, trying to prove his innocence, when his estranged wife basically stops reaching out to him. And then what kind of pushes him out of the nest, so to speak, is the corporation is trying to make room for an influx of war criminals that are going to be joining the jail, but they don't have enough room, so they're going to do a purge. Some of the prisoners that are going to be purged are going to be moved to other locations, and some are going to be killed, executed, basically. And our protagonist is on the list of to be executed. And so now he's like, I got to figure out a way to get out of this. Stuff ensues, basically, and he is chosen by the corporation to do a what is it called? To do a task with a group that is to sabotage a colony ship. And while he's working with the team to sabotage this colony ship of like a rival corporation, he sees that his wife is one of the colonists on the ship. And so now he's trying to race against time to not only save himself and his team, but also his wife and the whole colony ship in general. Obviously, he's able to do it. Then he goes back to the jail with like a new sort of, he's changed, a new sort of sense of purpose, probably a reconciliation with his wife, and probably the inference, I guess, at the end of the story is that he's going to do something to combat the corrupt corporation. So that was the story that I decided to give Claude to like, okay, let's see if we can make something out of this. So I did ask it a question like, okay, what are y'all gonna like steal this idea? But anyway, so I pasted in the information. And, you know, AI gives the customary, ooh, this is so good, I love this, and all that fluff in your brain, which I really don't like. I really don't like that because it feels disingenuous, which it is because it's not a real person. But Claude's analysis. I will read you Claude's analysis, and then we will look at, as you can see on screen, this initial structure that Claude gives. And then I'm getting to the point where now we're going to start working again, because I wanted to see if I could add some other points in the kind of intro section a little bit before, because it's like not that many choices as it stands right now. So the emotional question I see here, according to Claude, now this is Claude's analysis, is safety worth the cost of invisibility? Basically, your main character's whole arc is about a man who learned that being seen is dangerous, so he made himself small and then discovered that smallness has its own body count. The story asks, what does it cost you to hide, and what does it cost everyone around you? That's the question the branches need to answer in different ways. What I noticed about the story circle as written, the first half, you through find, is almost entirely linear by nature. The setup, the mission, the team dynamics. That's correct. Players need to be invested in him before choices mean anything. The branching opportunities are almost all in the second half, where it gets personal. Where Claude saw the natural branch points, 3 moments jump out as places where a different choice leads to a genuinely different emotional experience. The first is the moment he spots his wife on the ship. Before he acts, does he tell the team or try to handle it alone? That choice establishes whether he's learned anything yet. The second is during the confrontation with the team leader. Does he appeal to the team's conscience, or does he try to take the leader down? That's the difference between the man he's becoming and the man he was. The third is the return. What he does with his skills once he's back. Does he go loud in public, or does he dismantle the corporation the way he's always operated, quietly from the shadows, but this time by choice rather than fear? Side note, I really don't like the way AI's, I want to say chat, but AI's write, because it has a very particular no style, but it's just like you can hear it. The more you hear AI stuff, you can start to pick it out. It kind of like grates my nerves a little bit. But anyway, so here is the map that Claude built. And when you click, it does give you explanations. So I'm going to click each and I will read basically Claude's summary of each little section. So you, the comfortable prison, invisible, numb, safe. The purge list changes everything. Can you hear the AI voice in how it's writing? If you haven't learned to pick it up yet, you will. So the you story circle beat, shared trunk, the comfortable prison. He's found a kind of peace in erasure. Menial work, 1 meal, a narrow bunk, and no one looking at him. His wife stopped visiting. He stopped expecting her. The days blur together and he decides that's fine. This is the status quo the player inherits, a man who has chosen smallness as survival. And they said, craft note, resist the urge to make the prison too grim. His comfort in it is the point and the tragedy. The player should understand why he'd want to stay invisible before the story forces him not to. So as a note, if you're looking at the screen, the green is the shared trunk. The yellow or the amber is a choice point. The purple are the branches and the gray is the endings. So the next One is the needs section, the execute list. 86.9 purged. He's in the kill column. Fire under his feet. So the purge announcement hits the prison population like a slow tide. It really, listen, this AI, because I haven't told it yet, don't. Like with ChatGPT, when I'm working with it in terms of like organize my notes type of vibes, I'm like, do not extrapolate anything. Only put what's in the transcript. Don't make up story. This is not a team effort right now in that sense. But anyway, listen, whatever. The purge announcement hits the prison population like a slow tide. When the list comes out, he scans it once, half expecting not to find himself. He's there. Execute column. His invisibility worked so well, it registered as worthlessness. 6 months. The numbness cracks. A craft note. Give the player a dialogue choice here about how he reacts. Panic, dark humor, or cold calculation. It sets his personality stat without branching the plot. All roads lead to the corp's offer. So the next one is go, the corporation's offer. Sabotage the rival ship. Succeed equals freedom. Fail equals die now. 2 reps arrive. They know what he can do. His attempts to hide never fully worked. The mission, infiltrate a rival corp's colony ship, upload a sabotage code into the terraforming AI, make the colony's failure look like the rival's negligence. His team is hostile, especially the leader. The alternative is immediate execution. He says yes. Craft note, the leader's hostility should feel specific, not generic. Maybe he's heard about what the main character can do and is threatened by it, or maybe he was promised leadership of a different operation and got saddled with this one. Give him a reason. Okay, thanks, Claude. So the search beat, building the team, training, friction, the code. He's tolerated, not trusted. Training in the margins. Weeks of preparation. Main character quietly makes himself useful without making himself visible. Old habit. He writes most of the code. The team starts to reluctantly respect the work, if not the man. The leader keeps him at arm's length. A few team members begin to warm slightly. The code is finished. They ship out. Craft note. One team member should become a genuine ally by the end of this beat. Someone who sees him clearly before the mission goes sideways. That relationship pays dividends in Act 2. Next is find the colonists. The ship isn't empty. Real people. The code means mass death. So they infiltrate using forged IDs. The intel was wrong. The colonists aren't following later. They're already here. Hundreds of them. Families and workers and crew. Uploading the code means mass death. Main character and some teammates falter. The leader doesn't. They upload it anyway. The team's logic ironclad. Their lives are these strangers. They start to leave and get trapped in a pre-launch presentation. Craft note. Let the player feel the wrongness of uploading the code even though they had no real choice. Don't moralize, just make the colonists specific. One face, one name overheard, that's enough. Well, obviously I already had that in my story. Okay, so I don't know why it's telling me to do that. I already had that. But anyway, so choice 1. This is where the choices come in. He sees his wife. His wife is on the ship. Tell the team or go it alone. He sees her in the crowd. Across the presentation hall, among the ship's crew, his wife. She hasn't noticed him yet. He has maybe 60 seconds to decide. Tell the team that this is now personal and he needs to pull the code, which means exposing himself, starting a fight, and risking everything. Or say nothing, keep his head down, and try to find another way out alone. Same man, different bets on who he's becoming. Craft note. This is the entire emotional question of the story made into a single moment. Really? Is that? Telling the team is the new him. Visible, vulnerable, leading from the front. Going alone is the old him. Capable, hidden, and ultimately isolated. Both should feel completely justified. So now we can see the different choices or the different, branches. So if he tells the team, he tells them quietly mid-presentation. His ally understands immediately. 2 others waver. The leader calls it a liability and moves to override. And main character for the first time pushes back openly, not cleverly, not from the shadows, just flatly refuses. The confrontation draws security. They're detained. His wife from across the room finally sees him in handcuffs in front of everything. Craft note, the cost of openness is public exposure and loss of control, but the ally sticks with him, and when the bioagent activates early, he already has people who choose him. And then we'll continue down this branch. So take The detention gives his wife time to reach him. She's angry, frightened, confused, and then he tells her everything in a holding cell with the ship about to take off and a bioagent quietly spreading through the ventilation. The leader is incapacitated during a struggle when the ship lurches into unplanned launch. It falls to MC. His wife is the first one who believes him, and that matters more than he expected. Craft note, the reconciliation here is fast and a little desperate, which makes it feel real. She doesn't fully forgive him yet. She just decides he's telling the truth. That's enough to start. So before we go to the return, the converging trunk of the story, we're going to go to the other options. So he sees the wife on the ship. Does he tell the team or does he handle it alone? So him handling it, if he handles it alone, he says nothing. He starts quietly working on a countermeasure alone, using the skills the team doesn't know he has, accessing ship systems without telling anyone. He nearly pulls it off. Then the bioagent synthesizes early, ahead of schedule, and the ship goes into lockdown before he can finish. He's cornered in a maintenance corridor. His wife is somewhere in the chaos he helped cause. He has to come out of hiding now, but he's alone and the team doesn't know what he's been doing. Craft note, the cost of silence is that he carries the weight alone and loses time. When he does emerge, he has more to explain and less goodwill in the bank. The reconciliation with his wife is harder won here. Okay, so next, he emerges into the damage. The maintenance corridor floods with emergency gas. He comes out into the chaos. Colonists panicking, crew overwhelmed, the bioagent already in early synthesis phase. No one knows him, no one trusts him. The leader is unreachable. He finds his wife before she finds him and has to convince her, a woman who believed he was a criminal, to trust him right now in the middle of a disaster he helped engineer. Craft note, the reconciliation here is the most dramatically difficult. He has to lead and win her back at the same time with less goodwill and more to answer for. Harder, but more earned. All right, now, so we're going to go back to the main trunk. Return, he leads. He uses his skills, all that stuff. So he leads them through it. Both branches arrive here. Using his skills openly, fully, without apology, he coordinates the response, neutralizing the bioagent, keeping the colonists calm, working with the ship's crew. His wife fights alongside him. When it's over and the ship diverts safely, they're taken back to the prison. He's changed. The skills he's spent years hiding are now the thing that saved hundreds of lives. The corpse debt to him is enormous, and he's done being small. Craft note, the convergence works because both branches earned it differently. Branch A, players see a man whose openness was rewarded. Branch B, players see a man who paid more and came out harder. Same destination, same emotional texture. So now, with ending A for the branch of openness, telling people what's going on, he comes out swinging. Back in prison, he doesn't wait. He uses his skills publicly, reaching out to other inmates, building a network, surfacing evidence of the corpse operations that he's been quietly cataloging for years without knowing why. Such an AI thing to say. Quietly cataloging for years without knowing why. Why do they all sound the same? I'm not mad at it because I really don't want AI to be good at writing. The takedown is loud and messy, and he is very much at the center of it. His wife comes back. He doesn't know yet how to be seen this much. He's learning. The tone is hopeful and a little overwhelming. He chose visibility completely. Now he has to live in it. The ending is the beginning. Replayability hook. Go back and try the shadow ending. Same freedom, different cost. Now let's look at the ghost. So he disappears on purpose. Back in prison, he's quiet again, but it's a different kind of quiet. Chosen, not hiding. Over the next months, the corp begins losing assets in ways no one can trace. Contracts dissolve. Evidence surfaces anonymously. Couldn't say it. He dismantles them from inside. The same invisibility they thought made him worthless. Why did I say that word? He dismantles him from inside. The same invisibility they thought made him worthless. That was weird. His wife writes to him. He writes back. He doesn't know what they are yet. He's okay with not knowing. The tone, quieter satisfaction. He didn't stop being the shadow. He changed what the shadow does. For players who chose branch B, this feels like the fullest version of him. The ending honors who he is instead of asking him to become someone else. So that is how Claude organized the story, obviously, that I provided for it. So I am going to continue, I think, to do a test with this particular story. And what I want the test to include, I feel like I want to do a full test to understand the full process, because in the questions that I was asking it before, it's basically like I have to, I think what's going to happen is Claude would create the code for this, and then I would just be inputting specifically the story things. So like lines of dialogue that I write, artwork if I create artwork for it, which I might do some character artwork for it just to like get a full thing. But my understanding of what Claude told me is that I will have to take it into a different like compiler app. So RenPy, it might be called RenPy. I don't know if you've heard of it. It is an app that is pretty widely used. It's like an OG in the space. I think for both like, I don't want to say legitimate, but like, that's the only word I can think of, like legitimate visual novel releases, as well as DIY, scrappy self-publishers like I would be, use this program. So it would be like, okay, Claude creates the code in the RenPy format, and then I would take it into RenPy and use it to actually create the game, the playable version of the game. So I think that'll probably be what I do with this. And now what I need to decide is how much detail I want to begin adding to the story, how long I want to work on this, because I have a tendency, taking a little break, not a break, but like a little intermission. I have a tendency to expand things stratospherically. Not stratospherically, that's not even a word, is it? Into the stratosphere. Because I was already thinking of like, okay, I want to add some more options here, even though this is just a test. So I might have to rein myself in. Do not go too far. I do want to add a few more things, which you'll see as I go through, kind of catching you up on where I am with Claude right now. So I'm going to have to try to contain myself, I think, going forward. But I do want to add some more stuff to this early beginning, even if they're not things that deeply affect the, endings, the main trunk of the story. I want to add some things that will add some flavor, that will maybe add a slightly different dialogue option. And I'm going to try to not let it blow up to an unmanageable degree just for this test. So that's now back to the story, the show. It's telling me about decisions that it made. And then it asks me, okay, what is the power? What is the skill that the main character has? And so what I said was basically, I'm thinking something related to tech, obviously, like maybe he was the one or on the team that actually created part of the code that enabled humanity to colonize the galaxies further afield. Maybe he created one highly important aspect of the AI that runs the colony ships and even other like spacefaring ships. And this should have made him wealthy and well respected for the rest of his life, but instead he was framed and shoved in jail to get him out of the way, maybe even by the very corporation that hires him for the job. Claude does some more puffing up, trying to blow my head up a little bit. So we're going to skip it. It's talking about, it's just doing more puffing. So the irony becomes the engine. He built the thing he's now trying to sabotage. It's so AI, girl. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to even read. If you want to read it, it's on the screen. You can pause it. I just don't like being fakely complimented. So a few questions to sharpen it further. Let me just skim this real quick. What did they accuse him? Okay, so I think I didn't answer any of these questions. I just added some notes, and that's where I've left it. So the questions that it asked me, what did they accuse him of specifically? So this is where when it started asking me these questions and then giving me its own suggestions, this is where I felt like Claude is kind of pushy. Claude is a little bit aggressive for my taste. Not aggressive, but just pushy. Pushy, I think, is the word that I would use for Claude in this experience of Claude, because it gives some options and then it says, this is the one I think you should do. And I feel like probably Chat GPT does that, but I feel like it feels a little softer, where I can be like, we're going to ignore everything that you just said, Chat. Thanks. But here, I'll give you guys the options. And I did grit my teeth and I did choose one of the options that it provided. Okay. Don't judge me. So, the options that Claude provided, he was accused of selling the code to a rival corporation, which would make him look like a traitor rather than a criminal, and explain why even people who respected his work turned on him. Or he was accused of deliberately introducing a flaw into the AI. Hold on, I gotta turn on the fan, girl. It is warm right now for some reason. Hopefully I can feel it, and hopefully you don't hear it. He was accused of deliberately introducing a flaw into the AI that caused an early colony failure. Deaths he didn't cause hung around his neck. Darker, and it means every colony ship running his code is a reminder of what he supposedly did. Or the corp simply buried him under fabricated financial crimes, boring on the surface, but devastatingly effective because there's no heroic counter-narrative, just paperwork and lawyers and a reputation ground to dust. I lean towards the middle one, says Claude, the colony failure, because it rhymes so painfully with the mission he's on now. They framed him for destroying a colony. Now they're asking him to actually do it. On what he built, the AI that runs colony ships is broad. The more specific, the better. A few directions. See, it's still telling me what to do. I'm like, take a step back, Claude. Okay. My goodness. Chill. Anyway, a few directions. The navigation consciousness layer, the part of the ship AI that makes semi-autonomous decisions in deep space when it's out of communication range. It says some more stuff. I'm only going to read the first part of each sentence. The biosphere synthesis engine, the terraforming and life support AI specifically, or the colonial governance AI, the system that helps nascent colonies self-organize, allocate resources, resolve disputes without Earth oversight. And it suggests the second one, the biosphere synthesis engine, feels most resonant to me because it means the sabotage code is his code turned inside out. He built something designed to sustain life. Now he's being asked to make it kill. That's the emotional gut punch that should be on every page. You see what I mean? You see what I mean by Claude just being pushy? Okay. And then it kept going, girl. It's like, okay. One more thing this backstory adds. The corp hiring him for this job is almost certainly not a coincidence. Think about it. They have the code he wrote. They have engineers who've worked with it for years. Why do they need him specifically? Because something about the rival ship's implementation is different from the original. It's been modified, upgraded, maybe by someone else who built on his work. The corp's engineers can't write the sabotage code without understanding the original architecture at a level only he has. He's not just useful to them, he's irreplaceable, which means they were always going to pull him off that execute list the moment they needed him. Oh, he might even realize this during the search beat, that the execute list was manufactured pressure, not coincidence. They put him in the kill column on purpose to make sure he'd say yes. I don't know that that's necessary, because I feel like if they have this much control over him, they could just be like, you're gonna do this. And he can't really refuse because he's a prisoner, right? I guess if they want to ensure that he doesn't actually sabotage it, doesn't actually try to do something without having the pressure of, or you're gonna die. I think it should be a real list. Like they're really gonna execute a bunch of people, not like a fake thing. That single realization that he was manipulated twice by the same people could be its own scene, and it changes his relationship to the mission entirely, which I do like that. Okay. Want me to update the story map with this layer folded in, or do you want to sit with these questions first and come back with answers? Either works. I just want to make sure the foundation is solid before we start writing scenes. Claude, excuse me? You are not the director of this. You're not the director, bro. Anyway, let me stop getting testy with Claude. Okay? So I basically disregarded all of that for the moment, and I just wanted to add a couple of notes that I want to return to later with you, which was that when the purge list is released and he's fired up to find a way out of the predicament, he uses his skills in some unsanctioned way in order to save himself and maybe others, because he's on the execute list anyway. So what else can they do to him? This is what, is this what reminds, quote unquote, the corporation about him? I kind of want to use this as a way to add some choices in the beginning and some light branching paths, maybe the main story and two other options that end the narrative early. Both he and his wife, the next note, both he and his wife had continued sending messages, but they were intercepted maybe, or one last letter from his wife reinvigorates him not to die. So with that note, I wanted to add the option somehow for there to already be some renewed connection between him and his wife, who for all these years still has not filed for divorce from him. So that in itself says something. And I wanted to add an option that doesn't change the path necessarily, but that can add some richness to when they are interacting with each other on either path. And it could also be a thing based on what we read through, that if he interacts in this particular way early in the story with something relating to his wife, and she gets a message or something like that somehow, that even in the harder path to winning his wife over, to getting her to trust him, it's made slightly easier if he makes this particular choice in the beginning of the story. Just it adds a little extra stuff. And then in the other path, it could just make it, even sweeter for them to kind of reconcile. More puffing up by Claude. And he said, let me reflect back on what I'm hearing so we're aligned before you finalize anything. On the first note, the unsanctioned skill use. This is a great fix for something that was slightly hand-wavy in the original map. The corp remembered his skills needs a trigger, and this gives it one that's also character defining. He's been dormant for years, and the execute list is the thing that wakes him up, not just emotionally, but practically. He does something with his abilities, probably something that helps other inmates as much as himself, because that's who he is underneath the numbness. The early branching you're describing, a main path forward, and I haven't read this part yet. I just put those notes in and then closed it and left. A main path forward and two paths that end the narrative early is a classic structure sometimes called gating branches. The early choices don't change the main story. They determine whether the player reaches the main story. Think of them as a cautious attempt that works well enough to get the corp's attention without backfiring, the main path forward, a bold attempt that draws too much heat too fast, an early ending where he's caught, punished, and the corp never gets the chance to offer him the mission. He dies in the purge. Short, sharp, a lesson in what this man is not yet ready to be. A passive attempt. He tries something small and it fails, and he gives up and accepts his fate. An early ending where the corp notices him anyway, but he refuses the offer, and that too is a kind of death. Quieter, maybe sadder. The main path becomes the one where he threads the needle, visible enough to be remembered, controlled enough not to self-destruct, which notably is the balance he'll need to find again on the ship. On the second note, the intercepted messages. This one is doing a lot of emotional work, and I want to make sure we pick the version that hits the hardest. You've offered two slightly different ideas. The messages were intercepted all along, meaning neither of them actually stopped reaching out. They just never knew the other was still there. This is devastating in a slow-burning way. His wife didn't abandon him. He didn't go silent on her. The corp or someone cut the line between them, and both of them spent years grieving a relationship that was still alive. When he finds out, and he should find out probably on the ship, it recontextualizes everything. His passivity wasn't surrender, it was grief for something that wasn't actually gone. And then the other option I gave, one last letter gets through and reinvigorates him. This is more active and immediate. She reached him. Whatever she said was enough to crack the numbness before the purge list even arrives. This makes her a more active participant in his arc from the very beginning, even though she's not present yet. These aren't mutually exclusive, actually. You could have both. She's been writing the whole time. The messages were intercepted, but one gets through. Maybe because he did something with his skills that briefly opened a channel, or because someone on the inside slipped it to him. Which is, as I was reading through this just now, I was thinking that could be the case. Either one of those options for how he got this letter. Could be like, as he's doing whatever he's doing to this trying to, save himself and a few others as well, using his skills. It could be also that he's able to unlock and he sees this file of letters that he never received from her. And then maybe he also sees that his letters were blocked before they got out to her, perhaps. So I don't know. Let's see. That one letter is the proof that she never stopped, and it arrives right as the purge list does. 2 earthquakes at once. That timing would be extraordinary. He finds out she still loves him and that he's going to be executed in the same week. That's not a man who can stay numb. That's kind of nice. I like that. Listen, because I'm smart, bro. Not Claude. Anyway, whenever your list feels complete, share the rest and we'll fold it all in before touching the map. What else is on your mind? Okay. So let's see. I think that what I'm going to do here, because I'm looking at the time, we've already been here for 46 minutes, and that's kind of long. I did want to catch you guys up on this process. I'm not quite sure what the best way to handle these types of videos are. Like, should I do it kind of live with you? Which maybe that could be a separate type of video where it's like an actual live stream where we're working through, and I'm not worried about necessarily long, when am I ever, but long spans of dead air where I'm not saying anything and I'm just thinking, because that's a lot of what happens, right? Which is why I'm even kind of like, I don't know if I should continue in this video, because it's just going to be me sitting here thinking, right? Like, okay, what else do I want to add to the story? Going back and forth, not necessarily talking. I know I talk a lot on these videos, but I also think a lot quietly because there's pressure, right, on these videos where I have to talk. So I'm not just sitting here, thinking. So I think that what I'm going to do for this video is I have caught you up with where I am in this experiment. I feel like that's probably enough for now. I may do like a live stream video. The technology for live streaming is still a little bit fickle for me on this side. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like the internet drops out. I don't know. I'm still kind of working out the kinks of that. The other option is to do another video like this where I work with Claude off screen and then I just come back and kind of update you guys on the next level of progress in this experiment. So I don't know, maybe I'll try both. I would ask you which you would prefer, but as we know, I'm too scared to look at comments. Too scared to look at comments right now, okay? So that is it for today. Thank you for kind of like being here for the catch up. I'm sure that you can find an AI summary of what this video was about if you don't want to watch through it. But eventually, I would like to put this out in a playable form somewhere. I did ask Claude, where do people, because I kind of want to put it on one of my own websites, but it might be, I don't know, should I release it on Steam? Should I just do it on itch.io? I'm not sure. Create an actual app around it. I don't want to do a separate app for this. If I ever do make my little visual novel video game studio where I'm creating it, then maybe I'll have a separate app where it's like you can play all the different visual novels, and we'll have, as visual novels are released, we'll just upload them, little mobile games. I think that'd be cool, right? So anyway, thank you so much, friend. Sorry about this type of video where we're just kind of like looking at these types of things. I don't know if we're necessarily practicing story. But yeah, next week's video may be a continuation of this, potentially, Anyway, let me stop talking because I'm treating you like you're my friends on Marco Polo and I'm just sending you videos and just yammering on forever and ever. And that's not a good thing. So have a great weekend. Love you. Get out and get some sun or some air at least, depending on where you are. And do something creative this weekend. Okay? Bye.